Hey guys, welcome to my first ever Godot 4 tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to create a simple level select screen for your game. So without further ado, let's jump right into this video. Now, before we actually begin, I want to just mention real quick that only 10% of you guys are actually subscribed to the channel, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn that bell notification on because it definitely helps the channel out, and it's free. Anyway, with that said, let's actually make this work. Now, I am using Godot 4 Beta 1 for this tutorial. And as you can see here, I have the three scenes that we're going to need for this tutorial already created, which is a level select screen scene, a level buttons scene here, and the actual level scene. So we're not going to be focusing on the actual, how to create the layouts, for example, for like the level select screen, but rather we're going to be focusing on how to implement the logic needed to actually get the level select screen to actually work and function. But I will briefly describe how the rough layout of everything, just so that you have a better understanding of, how it all works. So essentially, for the level select screen, it's just a control node, which I renamed to level select screen, has a color rect and a margin container as a child of it, and then as a child of the margin container there's a VBox container, and then as a child of the VBox container there's a label and a grid container. Like I said, we're not going to be focusing on the layout itself, but rather on making the level select screen work. If you're more curious on how everything is set up specifically and what properties I changed in the inspector, then you can actually go ahead and download the GitHub project. The link will be in the description. So there you will find the completed project as well as the starter project if you actually want to follow along with this tutorial. And like I said, you can find everything that I did to the layout and the styles there, such as the default theme that I have applied to this. But yeah, we're not going to be focusing on that. Anyway, that's the rough explanation of the level select screen. Then for the level button scene, it's essentially just a normal button, which I have actually gone ahead and added a mouse entered signal and a mouse exited signal to the script. So I attached those to the script that I already created, which inside there's some code already, and this code you don't have to worry about at all. It's essentially just extra code that I added just to make the button a little bit more fancy and less boring. So essentially all it's doing is we're checking if the mouse entered or the mouse exited. If the mouse did that, it calls the grow button function, which essentially just plays an animation that scales our button up if we're hovering over it, and then it scales it back down if we're not hovering over it. So if I actually launch the button scene, you will see what I mean. So if I hover over the button grows, and when I'm not hovering it, it shrinks back down. That's basically all that code does. You don't have to worry about it to actually get the level select screen to work, so just don't worry about it. Then for the level scene itself, it's just another control node in this case, with a color rect as a child and a center container as a child. And then as a child of the center container, we have a label, which just is level 1. And then we have a back button that's a child of the level 1 directly. Now this back button is just an instance of my level button. And basically the way the level button works is it's basically gonna check when it's pressed. And when it's pressed, it's gonna call, it's gonna call a function that's gonna change our scene to the specific level that we pass it. So we're gonna check if our button is pressed, and then we're gonna do change scene to the scene we want. That's essentially what we're gonna do, and that's the first step we actually have to do to make this work. So go over to the level button scene, or create one if you haven't already, and then pretty much attach a script to your button. And then inside that script, what you want to start by doing is you want to actually define the path that we're going to use to change the scene. And in this case, we want to use an export variable. So since we're using Godot 4, we want to use @ and then export _file, because we want a file path in this case. So it's going to be an export _file var, and then the name of this variable is going to be level path. Now with that, we should have a property in the inspector, so let's set that up. And then we want to add another function. In this case, we want to add our press function here. So we want to connect the press signal to our script. So go ahead and do that. And that creates this onLevelButton press function. And inside this function here, what we want to do is first check if we have a level path. So to do that, we're going to do if level path is equal to null. If this is the case, then return. So basically, if there's no level path, we're going to return from this function. This is a guard clause to prevent getting an error, essentially. So if we do have a level path, then we want to do get tree dot, and in this case, it's going to be change scene to file. And then we want to pass the level path to this method here, like so. So that's actually all the code you need to get the button to work how we want it. So if we actually select the level button and go over to the inspector, you will see that we have a level path property that we can define. And let's actually define that for our level scene here for our back button. So let's go ahead and open up the level 1 scene, select the back button, and then for the level path here, we basically just want to get the path back to our level select screen. So go ahead and select your level select screen, and now we basically pass the path of our level select screen to our button here, which when we click the back button is going to take us to that scene. So if we do test it out here, you will notice that it does work, but we don't actually have any levels yet because we haven't added that functionality. To add that functionality, we want to go over to our level select screen, and rather than just instancing in a button here, a level button, as you can see here, and then linking the button by manually specifying the level path here, we're going to do that dynamically, and we're going to do that through code. So let's just delete that button we added and then select the level select screen and add a script. In this case, it's just going to be called level select screen. We're going to make it be an empty script and make sure that we're saving it on the same folder that we saved our level select screen. In this case, it's the GUI folder. So inside this script, we basically want to start off by getting our button, because we're going to need that button to instance in the buttons we need for the given levels we have. So const level button is equal to preload and then our button scene. So in this case, it's the level button.tscn. Then we want to use an export variable. So in this case, we're going to use an at export dir. So an at export dir is basically an export variable that we're using to get a directory. So a directory is basically a folder. So we're using this to define a folder path, essentially. So var dir path, because we want to get the path to a directory or folder, whatever you want to call it. Then we also need an onReady to select our grid container, because our grid container is going to be acting as the parent of the buttons we're going to instance in. So we want to do at onReady, since we're using Godot 4, remember, and then grid is what we're going to call it, is equal to $grid, and then it should actually pop up to autocomplete it. There we go. Then we want to actually add a function to read a directory and then read all the files inside that directory. To do that, we're going to create a function called func get levels. That's what we're going to call it. And then we're going to pass a path to it, like so. And then inside here, we want to start by doing var dir is equal to new, or actually it's equal to directory dot new. So we're basically specifying that dir is going to be a directory. So then we want to open a directory. So if dir dot open, and then our path, if dir dot open is equal to OK, so dot open, so dir dot open, the open method here basically returns an error or OK on success. So basically by doing if dir dot open path is equal to OK, that means that we did find that directory and we can open it. We successfully open it basically. So then we want to read that directory. To do that, we want to do dir dot list dir begin. List dir begin initializes the stream used to list all files and directories using the get next function. So that's basically going to begin the process to, get all our files. Then we're going to do var file name is equal to the dir dot get underscore next, like so. Then get next basically returns the next element, file or directory in the current directory. So it makes sure that we're getting the next file essentially. Then essentially we want to use a loop to essentially loop through all the files in that directory. To do that, we want to do while file name is not equal to an empty string. If this is the case, for now we can do print file name, just so that you can see that we're getting the all the files. And then we can do file name is equal to dir dot get next. And again, we're doing that get next to get the next file in the directory. Outside the loop, we can then do dir dot list dir n. So this just pretty much tells our current stream to close, essentially. Then after all that, we want to write an else. So basically, if we couldn't successfully open the directory using the path we passed, then we're just going to print an error occurred when trying to access the path. You can have it say something else. This is what I'm just gonna set it to. So that pretty much handles if we can't actually find the directory we're trying to open. So now we actually need to create the levels for each, essentially every level we have in our levels folder. So to do that, we want to write another function. So in this case, it's going to be func create level button. That's what we're going to call it. And then basically we want to pass a level path to it, which is going to be a string. And then we also want to pass a level name so that we can actually set the button text to the level name. So it's also going to be of type string, like so. And then inside here, what we want to do is var button is equal to our level button constant that we set up at the top, dot instantiate. So dot instantiate is the same as dot instance in Godot 3.5. So we're instantiating our button, and then we want to set the button dot text equal to the level name, and then the button dot level path, which is the variable we set back in our level button script to get the path to the scene we want to change to, equal to the level path that we're passing to the function here. Then we want to add this button to our grid. So grid dot add child button, like so. So now we want to call this when we're reading our files or getting our files, and that's right after the print statement that we wrote. So right after the print, in the get levels function, we can do create level button, and then we want the path to the level, to the file that we're getting essentially. And to do that, we're going to use a format string. So we're going to do quotes mod s slash mod s, and the mod s is basically a placeholder, and then modulo, and then square brackets dir dot get current dir. So that current dir here basically returns the absolute path of the currently opened directory. So it's basically going to be res / and then the folder we're getting essentially. So in this case, it's going to be res dot / and then levels, which is what's going to be replaced here. So the first mod s is going to be replaced by this, and then the second mod s is going to be replaced by the actual file name. So basically our level name. And then we also want to pass the level name, so it's essentially just the file name. So this right here is basically constructing our file path so that we can pass it to our create level button function, and then this is the actual name of the file that we're passing as the level name. The last thing we have to do here is just create our function ready. And inside our function ready, we just want to call the get levels function and pass our directory path to it. Like so. Now it should actually work, but right now if we launch it, it won't, because we actually need to assign the dir path export variable. So select the level select screen, and the inspector, you will see a dir path property, which is set to null. Click on the little folder icon, and then select the levels folder. So now with that, if I actually go to 2D and then I launch this, it should actually work. And for some reason, we are getting an error here. So let me just see. Set index level on base with value. Oh, it's because I believe I called it level path, not level. Let me just make sure by going to the levels button script. Yeah, it's called level path. So make sure that you actually write the right variable name. So level path is equal to level path. Now if we launch it, it should work. So there we go. We actually have a button for the level that we have in our levels folder. Now it does include the underscore and the .tscn. If you want to remove that from the button text, you can actually go into the create level button function, and then where you're setting that text, you can do level underscore name dot, and then you can do trim suffix, which is a method that basically you can do exactly what it says, trim the suffix. So in this case, we want to trim the tscn. So by doing that, that gets rid of the tscn part of the text. So now it's just level underscore 1, as you can see here. And then if we want to get rid of the underscore, we can do dot replace. What do we want to replace? We want to replace the underscore. What do we want to replace it with? We want to replace it with a space. So now if I save that and launch again, and then there we go, we just have a button that says level 1. So if we click on this, it's actually not taking us to the actual level, which it should have for some reason. So let me just see what error we have. Research file unsupported format character. Let me just make sure what I'm doing here is correct. All right, that seems so good. And it was printing the actual correct file name, I believe. So let me just see. So mod s, I don't think it's because I capitalized it, but let's just make sure. So lowercase s, and then modder. Okay, so this should be fine. And I am getting the next file by doing this. Yeah, I think it should be good. So let me just retry it. Okay, so yeah, the issue was because this does need to be lowercase s, not capital S. So make sure that it's mod lowercase s / mod lowercase s. But yeah, that actually, as you saw, does get our level select screen to work. So now we are taken to our level, and then we can click back to go back to our level select screen. Now if we want to add more levels, basically what we can do is select our level 1 here, and then we can right click and then do new inherited scene. Then we can just go ahead and rename this to level 2, then select the color rect. Let's go into the inspector and then just change the color. We can select the label and then change the text in the inspector to say level 2. Then we can just save, making sure that we're saving in our levels folder. And then it's called level _2. Save, and there we go. And then let's add another one while we're at it. So let's do the exact same thing. New inherited scene. This is level 3. Change the color rect color to an orange, I guess. Change the label to say level 3. And we can save in the levels folder again. Now if we go back to our level select screen and then launch it, you can see that we have our 3 levels now. Now we only have 2 columns here, but if we want more than 2 columns, we can select the grid container and then the inspector change the columns from 2 to 3. And now if I launch it, now we have a 3 column layout that works. So yeah, that's pretty much all you actually need to get a level select screen to actually work, and then you can just add all your levels to your level folder and then it automatically will add it to your level select screen. So yeah, hopefully this video was helpful, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and consider subscribing, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, have a wonderful day.